Good morning, everyone. Welcome on Green World in a Pod. I'm Tanya Gervasi. This is the podcast that looks at and questions our world and society through the lens of fashion and food. Today, we're not going to question or to look at the world through fashion and food, but we're going to do it through the art of astrology with Sudevi Kramer. And today, especially, the 30th of November, is a full moon and partial lunar eclipse. And when I met Sudevi and I had a reading with her, personal reading, I began to wonder whether somehow the stars, the planets, the movements can influence also businesses, perhaps, as crazy as it may sound, can they influence fashion, food, aspects of our lives related to fashion and food, for example. So when I asked Sudevi, she came back to me saying that there is a possibility the stars can be read in different ways for different reasons. And so I wanted to end season 1 and focus the 30th episode on with the outlook on 2021 to give a sort of guidance and a new perspective to anyone who is maybe still lost at sea, is lacking a sense of direction, and perhaps this episode here will, in some ways, comfort you. We just came from a very disruptive year, and so finding our North Pole, North Star, is, I believe, is essential to go forward and to live better. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you later. Welcome on Green World in a Pod. I'm Tanya, and I'm here with Sudevi Kramer, who's an astrologer, but not just an astrologer. She's a teacher of Thai Bodhi Yoga. Is that right?
Thai
Yoga Bodywork. Oh, I was like,
yes, it's all about the energy in the body. Yes.
It's interesting. I've never done it. Of all the yoga that I did, that's the only one I was like, what is that? I don't think I even saw a course here in London.
They do have it in London. They have some wonderful practitioners and teachers and schools. Thai Yoga Bodywork. Some people say it's lazy man's yoga. That would offend more traditional people because it's actually a system of healing that works with the meridians in the body, the sen lines. And for many, many years, this was considered folk medicine. Like, for example, in the villages, you would go in Thailand, you would go to the ma. And the ma is the massage doctor, kind of like a nurse practitioner. Okay. So you're actually receiving herbal treatments and different things going on in the body. What's interesting about that is I know that one of the first things I studied with my Thai herbal teacher in Chiang Mai, Thailand, Dot Po, the very first thing she wanted to know was everybody's birthday and their astrology. And she immediately would talk about what organs that you might have a problem with based on your astrology. So in the East, your birth date or the astrology is really very important. So I have on my intake form, whenever I see like a client who's needing, physical healing, and of course the origin could be something else, I always want to know their birth date. So being an astrologer has served me well for a long time.
So you were already studying astrology when you began studying Thai
Yes,
yoga?
yes. I was already, I had started, um, goodness, when I was like 19. So I knew Western astrology. I have studied some Thai astrology. I know a little Jyotish, and I know a bit of the Chinese system. We're all basically trying to define energy or look for patterns. Like astrology is really history, and you start seeing the cycles of when the planets were here, this happened, and there are cycles that you can actually track, just like the farmer's almanac tracks the moon for the harvest of the crops. So the idea, that there's energy out there like the sun, without it, earth would not be, is not a new one, and so of course, as we're on this little planet, we're all trying to figure things out, and we're looking for patterns. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. In fact, I wanted to ask you because about what exactly is astrology, because for many it's something so distant because besides the moon and occasionally Venus, and well, the sun, you don't really see the other planets. So the effects that they have on us or can potentially have on us, both as a society and individual people, is quite, perhaps it's also scary because it's really out of our control.
Completely out of our control. But just because it's happening, and astrology isn't fatalistic. I mean, it is. I mean, the sun is going to come up every day. It's going to set every day. The moon's going to do its thing. The planets are going to go through their cycles. But it's our response. We always have free will. So we can choose, just because the sun rose doesn't mean we're getting out of bed at this exact moment that the sun gets up. Although Ayurvedically, it would be recommended that we live more in the pattern of the sun, getting up early, going to bed early. But we have free will. We don't have to do that. So I think when we understand the energies, maybe we can make optimal choices for ourselves. It's that added edge. A lot of people use it for timing, but you can absolutely go against a chart. And you can push rock up a hill, but if you go with the flow, then it's a little easier. And I think it comes down to this: everything is energy. I mean, we know this. If we take an infrared camera and we photograph somebody, say after a yoga class or a massage, we see their field has expanded, if we did before and after. And so we're just now, since we can measure this energy, beginning to say, yeah, like feng shui, you walk into a room, it feels good. The energy, oh, this is good energy. I think that's a word that we all understand. And so astrology is not astronomy, very different things, but it is a study of the effect of the planets. And, I think that it can be related back to historical cycles. They used to manage the cycles, keep track of the lunations at Stonehenge. And there were lunar cycles that happened every 19 years. And you can go back all the way to Stonehenge, and you can see that the ancient people they were basically recording history. So this is not a new idea.
Why? I actually I always wondered, and I just remembered now. Why was in the past astrology so important? Every ancient society has created a calendar or a way to read the stars, to, as you said, to record cyclical passages. And I wonder, how did that get lost? And now it's so unimportant, or almost, yeah, woo
Well,
woo something.
I think that what happened, it was maybe perhaps the age of technology. We didn't have all of those things. Like, for example, like if you're a sailor, you're looking for the North Star. You know, you're actually using the stars to steer your way home. Okay. And so and that became very important. If you want to go back to Egypt, the pyramids are pointing at a constellation called Sirius. And some people say, and I'm really not, I don't really follow conspiracy theories so much, but some people say that that we were visited. And I'm not saying it's impossible, because I would think it would be naive to think that we are the only planet that supports life. You know, and we go to the moon, right? So why couldn't somebody, you know, come here?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, I mean, I think we're probably a younger planet. And so if you want to look at that, we're can't speak this morning, our culture, we're younger in a cultural sense, perhaps, than other planets. For example, if you look at the United States and you look at Europe, and I love Florida. I don't mean, I'm very grateful for my birth, for my life, but I also love Europe. But we are very, in some ways, I think in America, we're behind culturally. I said it. And so I think that we're almost like in the toddler state sometimes. We're kind of like very me. You know, if you ever work with children or take care of children, it's a very me-centered universe. And so when we're young, or when first there's us and our mom, and then as we grow up, we begin to think that perhaps there are things beyond us. And so I think it works that way in a larger sense for us as the earth. Okay, there's us, you know, and getting along in the world, and then all of a sudden, wow, I'm looking up here, there's stars, there's whatever. And so I think technology, like we used to look at the stars. I saw one of those memes, it was hilarious. And it showed everyone who had been at the beach, and they all had a white spot like right here, because they were all like this looking at their phones, and I guess the image of the phone blocked them from getting sun there. So I actually see people at the beautiful beach, and they're like this. They're not looking at the water, they're not looking at the sky, they're sure not looking at the sun, and they're in their phone. And so what's happened is our attention is getting away from nature, and it's going to our technology. So I think that has something to do with it.
So with you, we will delve into the sky of 2021. But before we do that, can we briefly summarize the sky of 2020? Because it's been quite a year. I'm sure even who does not believe in astrology or has never heard anything about it can relate to the fact that this year has been a challenge, and not just because of what happened in our material world, but the changes that went energetically, psychologically, emotionally. And I would like to know, what was the sky for that? How did the sky reflect that?
The
Briefly,
biggest thing,
I know it's
a big question. The outer planets, the personal planets rotate, they have quicker rotations, and the longer planets stay somewhere for a long time. And so they have a far-reaching aspect. And the outer planet, Saturn, which has to do with structure and time, karma, lessons, how we do things, hung out with Pluto in Capricorn. We had an exact, meaning they were touching, conjunction January 12th, and they first made aspect last November, which was the first reporting of a case of COVID last November. And there were cases, minor cases, we just weren't tracking them. By the time we really realized we had a problem, or what we're calling a pandemic, happened, obviously in March, but it was happening before then. I know I had something in January. I was very sick. I've never been this sick. I couldn't even get off the couch. I'm pretty sure I had it, before it was a thing. And I went to my acupuncturist, and I'm a big believer in that. And, I didn't have lung complications and all of that, because I don't want to get into what you should or shouldn't do, because I didn't know about it. All I knew was that I had never experienced that kind of fatigue in my entire life. And I'm a very healthy person, so I was able to rebound. But I probably had it for 3 weeks, when if the flu comes around, most people might get it for a week. I would typically get it for 3 days. So this this was huge for me. So I can say I experienced that. But as an astrologer, I didn't know what this was going to be. I was giving a talk at a yoga center in December saying, we are going to have an illness. We're going to have something that affects us all globally. I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be something that affects all of us. And, we could have an illness, and we could also have some civil war. And, in the United States, we have had some political things, some marching, some looting, some things like that. And of course, around our elections. So that may not so much, of course, who ultimately is in power certainly affects the world, but because of how they all have to get along. But certainly I saw all of that. I mean, I didn't know that Pluto can be a virus. I didn't know it was going to be a virus, but I knew that we were having a problem. What happens with structure and Pluto? We discovered Pluto the same year we discovered plutonium. What does plutonium do? It blows up. So you've got structure and something that blows things up. And Pluto is about transformation. So if something doesn't serve us, we have to get rid of it. And it's not always pleasant when we get rid of it. So ever since January 12th, globally, for everybody, we've been having to redo our structure. It's gotten blown up. COVID was the virus that kind of blew things up. And so we had to literally change what we did. And that has just been going on all year. And it's in the sign of Capricorn, which is cardinal Earth. And think about the qualities of Earth. Earth is kind of like not moving, and what happened when you're in lockdown? Stay home. Okay. So you have to stay home. And that, how do I get my groceries? Amazon became a big thing over here because everybody was getting everything delivered to their door. And I'm sure that you have Amazon. I know you have Amazon in the UK. So probably Amazon in the UK did very well too. So this was a big change for us. And when you relate to the nodes are karmic points. Like they're a place between the axis of the sun and the moon. And in Indian astrology, or Jyotish, they're called Rahu and Ketu. And even if you don't know anything about astrology, you hear about that. And it's the North Point and the South Point. The North is where we've been. Think of the North Star. We're guiding. That's where we're headed. And so technically opposite from the South, of course, the North is the South. So that's where we've been. So our back is to that. And so we don't get rid of where we've been, Like, for example, our mother gave birth to us. We don't throw her away. She's still our mother. She's still back there. Our father's back there. Our heritage is back there. But then we're going forward. We're going to have our own family, our own life. So we're looking at the North Star. Okay. So that's to give you an idea of the energies that play. And the energy of the North and the South points in a chart are that's what's at play now for the global person. And they have the North, it's a 22-month cycle. And the North Star of where we're heading is Gemini. Gemini is mutable air, which means if you stay stuck, you may not adapt. You've got to adapt. It's quick, it's thinking, it's communication. Gemini in astrology also represents our environment, the neighborhood where you live, the local market. Okay. Sagittarius is a traveler. Sagittarius is like freedom. Don't fence me in. I'm getting out of here now. And I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. And Sagittarius is actually a big humanitarian being ruled by Jupiter, but can be very blunt and can also, in its desire for freedom, can be a little selfish. It's kind of like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I'm not really so much thinking about how it's going to affect anyone else because it's impacting my freedom. Freedom is the thing at any cost. And I think that we can all see this in other countries, in our families, in our lives. Like whenever we've acted perhaps impetuously, like I'm out of here. And I'm not thinking about, well, how does my partner feel about this? Or how does my baby or my child, my cat, my dog, I'm just getting out of here. Whereas Gemini would say, would want to talk to everybody about it. Listen, I've been thinking about going to such and such, and this is what I want to do, and I'm going to set up communication with you. I'm going to write you. I'm going to text you. I'm going to email you, and I'm going to send you pictures of the lovely environment where I am. Won't that be lovely? So there's a difference in how we take our freedom and how we communicate. And not to throw Sagittarius energy under the bus, because if Sag saw someone starving, they would go get them food or whatever. But still, it's that more of a brash action. Okay. And it's very interesting because as far as the nodes go, which are karmic points for us personally and globally, but they're both mutable. Okay, so we went from mutable fire, and fire can completely change form. So it's that Sagittarius energy that we're leaving, or that we came from. I wouldn't say leaving because we're still there. Is very brash, and Gemini is softer. It's going to talk to everybody. So when I look around, and we're in this 22-month cycle that started. We have to communicate. And people are getting depressed if they don't communicate, or the elderly are getting stuck in their homes and they can't talk to people. And so communication, which is Gemini's favorite thing to do, is what's up. Okay. That is what's up for everybody. The Saturn energy, back to Saturn and Pluto is in Capricorn, is okay, we're locking everybody down. And we've never seen, a lot of astrologers had a lot of different things to say about it coming in, but astrologers are just giving a weather report. We didn't know, most of us, when we saw Saturn and Pluto together, exactly what that was going to mean for our culture, because none of us have been alive, during that time when they were last conjunct. So it's been a learning experience of how that, all we can say is structure, deconstruct. How's that going to work? Well, the way it worked is we had to work at home, many of us. Some of us had to entirely change professions and completely review how we did things while under lockdown. That would be Capricorn. And what's really exciting, back to the planet of Saturn and Pluto, is Saturn, which is structure. Pluto's going to stay there. Pluto's going to stay getting rid of, it's going to be the demolition man. Pluto stays someplace for 37 years. So Pluto is in Capricorn for a very long time. So there's nothing, it's just going to continue to blow up anything that doesn't work. And if you want to call this, like Eckhart Tolle's The New Earth, you can.
I was about to say that. I'm like, whoa, it's going to be a long demolition process in order
That's exactly what's happening with Pluto.
In order to build the new.
Yes. And so Pluto isn't going anywhere. Pluto, and Pluto's friend Saturn was, they were reviewing structure together. And that's what's been happening is Saturn has been in Capricorn all year for 2020, and Capricorn is immovable Earth. So now we're moving, Capricorn, is getting ready to move into Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus, which rules like electronics, like what we're doing right now. I'm in Florida. You're in London. We're talking. That's exciting, but that's very much a Saturn and Uranus thing to do. And so a lot of us are working remote. We'll continue to work remote. I do lots of remote readings with my clients, just like this. And it doesn't matter where they are. And, and I've done that with people in my city as well, whereas normally I would see them in person. And we're going to see more and more of that. Like, a lot of us like it. Like, I absolutely love reading somebody's chart while I'm drinking my tea or I have a cat in my lap. I'm very comfortable. I'm really happy about this, But
in fact, I wanted to ask you how exactly businesses will be impacted by the sky, and you already mentioned that it's everything, or if not everything, a lot will be moved. No, let me rephrase. What can be moved online will be moved online.
Absolutely. What's happening is a lot of businesses, unfortunately, have shut down. We've seen that in the food industry, where a lot of restaurants just weren't able to ride this out. A lot of, unfortunately, family-owned businesses didn't make it. And we don't want to lose, I think the message for all of this, I'm probably jumping ahead, is we don't want to lose our humanness. As a culture, as a world, we really want to be able to stay in our heart and have that human factor as artificial intelligence comes in. I think that what we're going to see more of in the Saturn in Aquarius, we're going to see more artificial intelligence. Like, you might go to the bank and an AI might be your person. Most of us who have like iPhones, we all know who Siri is. We all have these, I can just say, I won't say it because then I'm using my phone. Siri will start doing something if I give her the command, but we all have a virtual assistant. Anyone who's got an iPhone, and Apple is global, is experiencing some form of, artificial intelligence. And I know Deepak Chopra actually interviewed an AI, and she was teaching meditation. I think she lives in Saudi Arabia, and she has her own apartment, and she's completely artificial intelligence, and she gets paid in Bitcoin. Okay. Mm-hmm. So anything futuristic is like Aquarian, electronics, ahead of your time, inventive. So it's already here. And I think personally, I'm going to say, and every astrologer has their take, that we're going to see more artificial intelligence because they're not going to get COVID. So our interactions we're going to see more of that. And So that's going to change how businesses do things. Now, I talked about, unfortunately, the businesses that didn't make it, the people who got shut down. On the upside of it is like some business have decided that, wow, I don't really need, so much of a big storefront. Like there is a little business in my city that has completely shut down their doors, and they like it. They sell crystals and incense and whatnot, gorgeous, gorgeous rock specimens, mineral specimens. And so they're not going to reopen. They're online and they'll mail it to you wherever you are in the world or wherever. So they have beautiful, beautiful rocks. So instead of just being in Florida, now you can they can reach people in Georgia, they can reach people in France, wherever it happens to be, and they show videos of their wares, and I'm just amazed at how many people watch them. And people call in and they order things, or they text that they want it or whatever, and I think they've like tripled their business. So for them, because this is not to confuse everyone, if you want to bring in the Chinese elements, we're in a metal year. Metal is fast, fast, fast. And for me, it feels like I don't know where this year went. It's really, really fast. And we're going to end next year. 2021 is also going to be a metal year. It could be earth. An earth year would be where we sit back, we get to enjoy our harvest, or it could be fire, where we're really creative and, we're literally on fire. And, but we're metal. Metal cuts, metal is fast. And the thing that I would say to everybody that's listening to this, if you stay stuck in the way that you used to, or you think the things that worked for you in 2019 are going to work for you going forward, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have some challenges. But if you're able to adapt, adjust, and accommodate, which is like a yoga kind of a precept, then you will be okay. Like the store. Well, nobody can come in. Our doors are shut. Okay. If they stayed in that thinking or doing business the way they did in 2019, they would be out of business. And they went, oh, I'm going to do Facebook Lives. I'm going to find a new way to communicate. I'm going to change my structure. I'm going to let Pluto do its job, and I'm going to embrace this new thing. So they're coming into 2021 when Saturn goes into Uranus. They're probably improving their outreach, how they're going to, increase their customer reach, electronically.
Yeah.
So that's what we're seeing.
Wow. It makes me a little, at first, hearing this, a little worried, because I am a person who's very much for physical contact and in person, and I really need that. I can't just talk over the internet all the time. So I was wondering, how can humanity be preserved? And I had a thought just now that has to do perhaps with community, but also with what one can call like a COVID bubble. And I realized, seeing how my family is in Italy, I now have a new sort of family, and that is okay. A family of friends, and that's my bubble, and that's, in a way, that's my community. And I think that's going to be more and more important, is what is our community, chosen community of people close by, how to, I don't know, even be there for them, and have them be there for you. And I don't know how to explain this, but I have a feeling that the more business and work will be moved online, perhaps it's a good thing that more of our personal lives and what truly matters will stay outside of the internet. Which I'm not
I
saying
think,
that business, like I do believe that the businesses that will come forward and that will work on the long run will be those businesses, even small ones, especially small ones that are started from the heart, from something that is not rationally thought or conceived. But I do believe that there's a big part that the community where we live, the people we really relate to, their part will be really big in our lives. But I'm not sure if you understand what I mean, or
yeah, that's, you just described the North Node in Gemini and the community. And that's where we are. That aspect came in May 6th or 4th, I believe. And it's there for 22 months. And so Gemini is about the community, the neighborhood that you live in, the person next door. And that is more important, because if you're on lockdown and you can't go anywhere, those little interactions become more important. And how that would work for us globally is that, think about where we've been. Okay, say you traveled all the time. Well, for example, I took students to Thailand every year, right? I can't get into Thailand. Thailand's not letting anybody in, that's not already there. You can travel within Thailand. So I can't leave my country. Interestingly enough, I have a new neighbor who got sent back in through COVID, and came back to the States from their out of the country station because, they wouldn't be able to move. So we're all being sent back to our neighborhoods. And so our neighborhood, where the local market where you maybe get your food, or say someone had an organic garden, and we do have those here. Some people, like, there's a garden in the community that I live in, and people, different growers have their produce there, and it's not like a grocery store. So it's not like governmentally regulated, and they might post online about who's got what food, and you go in and you buy it. But those kinds of things become more and more important. The market, who's got the food, who's got this, well, do you have an extra mask, do you have this, do you have that? Because what happens when we shut down like this, and we can't jet set around in the world like we did when this, from the South Node being in Sagittarius, and all of a sudden we're in our, community, because that means that the goods themselves, like even with Amazon, aren't delivered or maybe even available in the same time frame. And so what happens, and I see it in Florida, because in the community where I live, we seem to have a lot of hurricanes. I've lost track of how many, I just, it's ridiculous. And I in the property where I live, the fence is still down from, I guess it was Sally. I think we've had 2 other hurricanes since then. But what happens when that happens and we lose power, people open their garage doors because it's hot. People come outside, and you meet people that live in your neighborhood, on your street, that you never saw before. And you talk to them. Mm-hmm. Because you may not have electricity or other things. And maybe someone was smart. Maybe someone has a generator, and you go over there. Maybe somebody has some food over here that you don't have, and they share it with you. Or maybe you have the goods and you share. But because we are put back into our little areas or community, that would be North Node and Gemini, then we meet our neighbors and we get reconnected. So from a humanitarian or standpoint, these challenges help us grow as human beings, and they help us grow our humanness. And I think it's a nice juxtaposition when you think about the artificial intelligence that's coming in to our world.
Yeah, perhaps we will manage to use it and learn to use this artificial intelligence as a mean to help um, get, how can I say, help help people instead of making life worse or miserable. I really hope that it actually helps humanity.
I think it can. Think about Pluto. Pluto gets rid of what we don't need with or without our consent. It's the planet of transformation. And you can clean out your closet willingly, or, you can wait for a hurricane. I don't know. But that's kind of what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a very positive thing if you can embrace that. If we think about hoarders and they have all this stuff, and people come in and get rid of the stuff for them when they let go of the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff that can represent many things. We can hoard emotions, all kinds of things. When we let go of the stuff or the things that we think that we need to have, and we can reach sort of a place of being empty or being peaceful, then we're happy. How much do you really need?
Oh man, yeah.
That's a whole nother podcast.
It's yeah, yeah. It's I have one last question before we wrap up this conversation, but I want to add that talking to you now puts into another perspective or gives a new whole definition to the phrase "go with the flow," because I never liked this, or to say, oh, I just go with the flow, because it's as if it gives you the idea that you just don't do anything, or you don't put work into whatever you're doing or living. And now I feel that I can say I am in the flow in a way that I am not resisting what is happening. And also whenever I read your astrological charts, or I had a recent reading with you, I realize how I am in the flow of how the sky, I am reflecting in my own personal way that what's happening in the sky. That's what I'm saying. And for me, that's in the flow. And as long as I can see for how difficult it is sometimes that I am following that process, I do feel in myself a general trust that then I'm that's where I'm supposed to be, even though I have no clue. I'm not really stable at the moment. I can't really see the future. I'm still building. A lot is being destroyed. But I have that feeling that, whoa, as long as I'm reflecting what's happening up there, somehow it's good. I'm in the flow. So for me now, being in the flow means exactly that. And I hope people who are listening to this will get at least a basic reading of their personal charts, because it will really give a whole new understanding of what's happening in their lives, and in this precise moment of collective change and difficulties and all of that, and also have a sense of direction. That's really important, I think, at the moment.
where their North Star is.
Mm-hmm.
We're all looking for the North Star right now.
Yeah.
It really is helpful to understand. But I have to say, as we wrap up, that I loved what you said about go with the flow, because that's what we do in a metal year, and we're moving into another one. And that's all about Saturn and Pluto. And I talked about the nodes, the South Node. We still, our mother's still our mother, our father's still our father, where we came from, and that's that Sagittarius freedom. Okay. But the North Node is Gemini. It's the community. So, for example, the South Node in Sagittarius would be the restrictions on travel, not being able to get in and out of certain countries. So if you didn't go with the flow and you were frustrated and you took all your emotional energy into being upset about that, or maybe even trying to get into the country, turning around and trying to get into, going backwards, looking over your shoulder, instead of like, wow, look what's going on in my neighborhood. And, oh, wow, I didn't know this person or that person, or, finding a whole new thing to do for a living that was maybe more satisfying, spending time with your family, with your neighbors, with your community, instead of always being somewhere else, being present, being present where you live. What could be more important than where you live, who you live with, what you eat, your immediate surroundings? So Sagittarius is more
really important.
yes. So
Realize.
flowing in with this and saying, well, instead of worrying about what I don't have, say, well, this is what I have now. And that doesn't mean not doing anything. It's just you're going to build with what you have now. Maybe you're going to build a house on your land or something, and you would have been out traveling and you didn't do that. Or you're going to build a log cabin in the middle of nowhere. I don't know. Or an earth house someplace. I don't know. But you're going to do it in your immediate surroundings. And it's kind of in a spiritual perspective, it's bringing us inside instead of outwardly seeking, realizing that actually the whole universe is inside of us. And so it's macrocosm, which is out there, the bigger picture, and then micro, the inner. So it's really kind of an exciting point of evolution. I think we all agree that we're in a point of change and in a point of evolution. And Pluto, our demolition person, isn't going away. But the good news for all of us, I want to say there's a message of hope, is that we are not going to always be stuck in our houses. It's created a new awareness and a new way to do things. And so we're in 2021, we get to come out of the house. We're not going to spend 2021 in complete lockdown. We may do things differently. You had mentioned earlier about fashion, and we talked about that.
I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, we forgot that. Black masks are actually going to be a fashion piece in 2021. And I hope this doesn't offend any of our listeners, because I know people have very strong feelings about wearing masks and not wearing masks. So I don't want to get into whether you should or whether you shouldn't. What I want to say about this is that just like astrology, fashion is a recording of what's happening out there. And from what I can see in the fashion coming forward in 2021 is that mask being part of our fashion is just simply a historical statement of what happened. And we don't really know exactly. The black would be like the unknown, the mystery. And of course, practically black goes with everything. So there's a practical side to it. So it's the mystery, it's the unknown. It could even represent, black if we want to look at it elementally and give it a color, it's water. And you said go with the flow. So you could have why not a red mask? Why not a printed mask? The fashion thing to have is a black mask, which means flow, which to me would mean wear a mask where it's required and don't when you're at home with your family. I mean, unless someone you're ill, they're ill. I mean, I don't want to, that's a whole nother podcast. So I thought it was interesting. And then we're seeing the pastels come back, which is like a lighter, a lightness of being. We want to be happy. We want to play. We don't want that heavy, dense energy. And then the longer, like jackets with the shoulder pads could also be like, our own survival. Like, I can do this, and that I need a little, I've got this, I can shoulder this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting to me that fashion is sort of reflecting our emotional response to what's happening around us. It's history. So I think that's interesting that it's, we're so connected in everything that we do. So it's kind of like art.
Oh, I love this. I'm actually excited for 2021.
I am too.
I feel I need rest. That's why this is the 30th episode of the podcast, and I will take a little break for December, and then start again in the new year. But I think I really need to gather all my ideas and the lessons of this year to start anew.
Well, it'd be exciting to see what you do with this as Saturn, the structure of your podcast, goes into Aquarius. I think your reach will become even more global. I'm just going to give you some predictions here. It will be even more humanitarian, and so it's just going to expand. And the other thing I didn't mention is Jupiter is moving out of Capricorn into Aquarius as well. And Jupiter is expansion, and it's global. And guess what? It's happy. Jupiter is always in a good mood. It's jovial. So I think that we're going to see, some optimism in 2021.
Yeah, and that's nice, because a few of the future guests that I'm already getting in touch with, they've really created certain projects that to me are just pure wow, or light, or help in some ways, and they are new, and I really like that. And to me, and what I realized the mission of this podcast it's to share the infinite potential that is in an idea, in a pod, in a seed, and which I find is for how can I say it? It's what will stay in the new world, which to me is in the color of green. I don't know why, but for me it's green. The new world is green, and so I want to amplify these little ideas, this startups, or businesses, or people who are just living in a certain way. And so yeah, that's...
If you want to look at it that way, and it's a beautiful, powerful way for all of us to framework it, 2020 has been the beginning of a new decade. And so what happens when we seed a garden? We have to get the soil ready. So I think that's what we've been doing in 2020 with Pluto, our demolition friend. We've been getting rid of all the weeds and stuff. And so now the soil is nice. So we've been planting seeds, and it's not too late. It's very wonderful. I think you said you were wanting to air this on the 30th. So for anybody listening to this, then they can really think about the seeds, or the sankalpa, the sacred intention that they want to set for 2021. It's very, very powerful. So to decide, and that energy will carry forth, if they listen to this in January or whenever. We can always set intentions. But
Absolutely.
know that we've weeded the garden, that this wasn't like a lost year, and that before you can create a beautiful structure in your garden, before everything can sprout, you have to get the soil ready. So we're very interested now, moving into 2021, to grow our gardens.
And so, how does your garden look? What is in it? What are you growing? What flowers? What trees? What plants? How is the soil? Do you have worms? Good worms? Spiders? Birds visiting? Is your ecosystem in balance? I think this is I leave you with some homework this time. For the first time, Green World in a Pod sets homework to the listeners. Well, thank you so much for having shared your time with us. And Green World in a Pod will come back with season 2 in 2021. It's time, as winter approaches, to pause a little bit and to rest, to rethink, replan, better focus on my Norse and Sar. And if you liked this podcast, if you liked this episode, please share it with myself and Sudevi on Instagram. I will leave every link in the show notes. You can rate this podcast, which would mean a lot. Also, leave any comments. And again, thank you very much. It means a lot to be listened. And I'll see you in 2021.